Well, good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you to our WIOA Regional Planning webinar today. Everybody will be muted this morning. We are certainly going to take questions either through the chat pod or we have a designated link on Illinois WorkNet. Unfortunately, due to the amount of people that we have attending, we won't be able to answer individual questions during the webinar. I'm now going to turn it over to Julio Rodriguez to welcome you and give you context and a framework for our discussion today. Julio?
Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julio Rodriguez, and for those of you who don't know me, I am the Deputy Director for the Office of Employment and Training here at the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Again, I want to welcome you all. I just want everyone to know that we have over 300 people who are listening in, and we're very excited. It's a cross-section of a number of community partners as well as state partners, and we're very excited about this opportunity. So with that said, can we go to the next slide, please? Yes. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulty myself right now. Sorry, everyone, I just lost the connection for a split second there. It's okay. Okay, so what I wanted to do first was to just sort of talk about a couple of things that most of you will be aware of, but may not be as aware of what it has to do with the work that we're going to be doing in the next couple of months. So I wanted to start off with just sort of saying that last year, both Congress and the President signed into law what we call the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which replaced what was called the Workforce Investment Act. And this act was really a complete sort of refresh on the whole idea of workforce development and really sort of ushers in a very new way of thinking in terms of the federal law and really tries to align workforce development, education, and economic development. This new law has a lot of elements in it that really we believe will help move our state forward and build off a lot of the foundation work that we've already done in trying to really align workforce and education and economic development. But this law really gives us an opportunity to really put together a state plan that really creates a vision and a roadmap for how we will do that. To that end, one of the things that we did a few months back was we had a policy academy for leaders of the state agencies that were being impacted by the new law, and those included the Department of Commerce, the Department of Employment Securities, the Illinois Community College Board, and also the Department of Human Services and others. We also had at that policy academy several business representatives, in particular businesses that really use the system and have been partnering with local workforce areas and the state on a number of initiatives. We also had representatives from the local workforce board at that academy, and at that academy what came out of that along with a vision was a set of principles for how we want to guide the development of our state plan and how we envision engaging all of our local partners. I should also say that we also had the Deputy Governor there, Trey Childs, and he and others from the Governor's Cabinet were there, and they also were very encouraged by what we have in front of us and the ability to align workforce education and economic development. Lisa, when I turn it over to her, will talk about sort of the vision and the principles that came out of that meeting and how that will help guide us as we move forward. The other thing as part of this new legislation is there's a huge emphasis on looking at the role of businesses and what kinds of support that they can do and looking at public and private investment. Part of what we're going to be doing as part of our state planning process is really looking at how do we develop regional plans that really look at key sectors in each of these regions and begin to think about what are the kinds of strategies that we want to use to help really meet the needs of the business community, job seekers, and students who want to move into high-growth, high-demand occupations in the state. We're looking at trying to do a much more customized approach when we do this planning process. We also are hoping that we can start to build strong consensus among all of the local players and the state around a unified way of thinking about how we address the needs of industry and business. We also are hoping that through this process we build new partnerships. We've had a great opportunity as part of the work that we've already begun to work with our local community action agencies, also working with our adult ed providers, talking to our folks in the voc rehabilitation industry, as well as looking at businesses that we may not have worked with in the past that we're hoping to bring to this effort. So I'm very excited, and I'm hoping that we can continue to move our agenda forward. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about the partnership, and as I said when I started this afternoon was that we have over 300 folks we're participating on this webinar today, and they represent many of the sectors that you see here. Folks from adult education, the economic development world, higher education, voc rehabilitation. We also have members of the Community Action Agency Association, economic development groups. We also have some community-based agencies that have done both adult ed programs and workforce programs. So we're very excited. This afternoon is really about giving folks who may not have a chance to hear the sort of day-to-day things that are happening, but to give a real thorough overview of kind of what the state's process is and what we're trying to do with our regional planning efforts. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Jones, who's going to walk us through the agenda for this afternoon, as well as go through some very specific activities that are going to be going on in the next couple of months. And again, I want to thank you all for your participation in this call and for the participation in the future. So thank you. Lisa?
Well, hello again, everyone. I just want to briefly go over the three main things that we'll be talking about. Of course, it's going to be what's the project overview and what does regional planning look like for us? Who's going to be participating in this regional planning process and how are those teams going to be developed? And then finally, we will talk a little bit more about the regional meetings and give you the dates of when those meetings will occur and what are some of the next steps that we have going forward. And just as a reminder, we are taking questions in the chat pod. We will not, however, unfortunately, be able to address them given the number of folks participating today, but we will be looking at every one of those questions and also to give answers back to those. And then again, there is a link that is on Illinois WorkNet specific to the questions for regional planning. And Natasha will put that up here, but we will also make available the PowerPoint that has the link. So with that said, Julio's talked a little bit about this through the Policy Academy, but I think it's important, next slide please, Natasha, that we start with what's our common vision and what are the common goals. And we're looking about this common vision across the system so we can start to break down the silos. And so it's, in addition to workforce, economic development is very important to make sure our businesses are engaged and we're creating education and training that meets the needs of those businesses. And as importantly, we're also making sure that the training that we're doing is where the jobs are. Next slide, please. So Julio mentioned the Policy Academy, and again, we had a great representation. Julio's absolutely right. We were very encouraged by the level of engagement from our state partners and our local partners and our businesses. And when we left that day, we came up with the following vision, which is employer-driven talent solutions that integrate education, workforce, and economic development resources across systems to provide businesses, individuals, and communities with the opportunity to prosper and contribute to the state's growing economies. So I don't really like to read off the slides necessarily, but I do think that it's important that everybody understands the vision and knows that it is a common vision. It's not just a workforce vision. It's really a vision for the education system. It's something that our businesses had a lot of input on. And so how are we going to get that vision accomplished? Well, we also came up with a set of principles. Next slide, Natasha. And these are the principles that we're going to use to guide our actions. You know, for demand-driven orientation, as I just mentioned, what are the sectors that the jobs are in? And how do we get businesses engaged at every level to discuss with them what are their training needs and what kinds of supports can we put in place to help them? And we're not just talking anymore about putting somebody in a training and finding a job, but we're really wanting to create career pathways and on and off ramps so people can come in and out of the system as they need to. And we're not just saying, here's your job and your only job, but what's the next step? What are the next educational goals that you have to meet that next step? We aren't going to be able to get this done without cross-agency collaboration and alignment, and as importantly, integrated service delivery. And while this cross-agency collaboration may sound like totally focused on the state, and it is, it's very important that it also occur at the local level. And agency is also inclusive of our partners, like community-based organizations, and our private sector partners as well. Because WIOA has such a significant emphasis and has included and placed a higher priority on low-skilled and lower-income individuals, it's important that we're doing access for all and providing opportunity for all populations. And also in WIOA, as you all know, the employment for people with disabilities is very front and center. So what kinds of programs and supports do we need to create for that group? And then as we're working, we have to make sure that we've got good, sound performance measures and metrics that will identify for us where we're doing great and where we could use a little improvement. Next slide, please. So our overall goal, I think, the larger vision goal, is how do we build the talent pipeline? We want to start with a framework, so we're creating plans that will meet our business's needs, that the training is exactly what they need. Is it accelerated training? How do we create those partnerships with across the system as well as with the businesses? How do we look at more integrated career pathways for all populations? What types of resources do we need to do that? And then how are we going to align all of these service delivery strategies so that we're creating a sound supply chain that keeps the pipeline open and us continuing to feed our businesses with skilled workers that they're asking for. Next slide, please. I think we can't really do this unless we're focusing on career pathways. So I think while our first objective is building the talent pipeline, we're certainly not going to do it without our education and job training services that will, as I said just a few minutes ago, will create the on-ramps or bridge programs for all of our customers, and particularly the disadvantaged and unprepared. And so how are we going to do that? Well, we just talked about it. We're going to align targets. We're going to align skills to the target sectors. It's important that we're doing accelerated programs where possible. You know, we've had situations where we've got businesses that might need a welding program in 6 weeks instead of the standard time that they're currently having. Also, we want to look more broadly at the system and not just our post-secondary, but how do we get involved more in the elementary and secondary education so that they're coming out and ready to be prepared to enter post-secondary training. Next slide, please. Sorry. So, and then here's just a visual of what will happen with the world-class talent pipeline. You can see that the service strategies are aligned to career opportunities and how folks can move in and out of the system. Next slide, please. So here's some of the strategies of where we have to move to get here. And currently, as we all know, programs and funding streams drive our goals. So I have a particular program and I've got certain rules that apply. So, but now what we want to do is align those program and funding streams and leverage them so that we are really looking at the whole picture regionally around the workforce economic and education needs. Certainly, as part of that, what are the policies and procedures and other types of supports that are currently out there that prevent us from doing that? So what we want to do is then move to having joint or partner plans and those policies in place to make sure that we're aligning our investments to the appropriate targets. I already mentioned the siloed program administration. I think that's just a given when we talk about each individual program just looks at their program and delivers their services and meets a referral here or there. And I also think here, and I'll stress it a little bit later, you know, we're talking about here's some of the things that are wrong with the system, but I think for Illinois it's very important to know that all of you have been significant players in making sure that we've already started to move towards that. We, worked with Adult Ed on a Bridge program. We've got several disability initiatives with the voc rehabilitation folks. So while we still have a lot of work to do, we've got a great foundation to make sure that we've got coordinated customer-focused talent pipeline and that we are really embedding and providing deeper relationships for our partners. Next slide. So what's our service delivery going to look like? Well, right now, each partner potentially has a business service rep. We know that businesses think, oh my gosh, how many people from each agency are going to contact me? So what we really want to do is look at those, and when I say we, I mean us as a collective. We want to look at how to regionalize business services and leverage each other's work that we're doing so that we come to our businesses with one voice. We also want to look at the types of training driven by industry and business needs rather than being individualized and not necessarily aligned. Credential attainment, that's a very big priority for the current system. And again, what types of credentials are needed and how does our current training align and what changes do we need to make? Go ahead and switch to the next slide. So I think with all of that said, then I want to just jump into real quickly, what's the planning process and what are going to be our success factors? Well, we want world-class regions. We certainly have great regions now, so we're ready to kick it up a notch, if you will. And these regions are going to be driven by great data, and we've been doing a lot of work over the last few months and some collecting data analysis and looking at the data regionally. In the spring of earlier this year, we partnered with the community college system excuse me, to do some regional forums with community colleges and businesses that will influence their strategic plans that community colleges are required to have, and then that information will also fit into, or will be looked at, and how does that integrate into the larger regional plans for the entire workforce system. And I think we spoke about that a little bit. That's going to require a regional vision. Certainly, as we've mentioned several times now, it's got to be guided by industry. Industry, businesses, our partners with them are essential to creating these world-class services. Then, like we said earlier, how are we going to align our services? How are our services going to be transformed so that we make a greater impact on the customers, not only the customers we serve, but also the businesses and getting their positions filled quickly? Next slide, please. We're going to go through a 6-step process to get there. First, we're defining regions and gathering data. Then we'll be forming state leadership teams. That actually started to happen on late October, where, I guess just the 1st of November. Anyway, late October, we brought together core partners from the various regions to start thinking about who should you include in your regional planning teams. What is that going to look like? Who's a point of contact? So that, and we just talk about that in terms of really logistics. It's not necessarily who will be the leader of a regional team, but who can we work with directly to coordinate among the larger team members. We'll be talking about visions. We've already seen what the state vision is, but as you all come together and work within your regional teams, then what vision will emerge from each of your regions? Now, it's important, too, that we look at not just what our industries are, where the jobs are, but even as important, what are the services we have out there? What does our population look like so that we make sure that we're tailoring our services to not just meet what the businesses need, but also meet our customers' needs. And that's kind of like, I think, falls within 4 and 5, which we're doing a SWOT analysis, or we're assessing talent needs, and then we're developing strategies and aligning those resources. And then, of course, the final step is going to be implementing our plan. And, Julio, I'm sure many of you have heard Julio say lots of times that a plan is just that. It's a plan. It's a guide for us to move forward. It can be adjusted. It gives us an idea of a path that we want to take. So it's certainly adaptable as we go along. Next slide, please. Thanks. So here's an overview of our project. And here are the key activities that we're undertaking. And as I said, we've already started a data analysis. And I think what's important, and I'll stress it again in a little bit, is that we came together with our interagency team. And the interagency team are the state-level partners that are instrumental in making sure that the services for the one-stop system are delivered at the local level, at local and regional level. So that data analysis is driven around those 10 economic development regions, and that was a joint effort by several of the state partners, certainly us, IDES, ICCB, and I apologize if I'm forgetting to mention one, but they came together to really look at the data so we have a good data package to provide the regions. I also think it's important to know that we're just providing the data to you all at the regional level, and then it's up to you all with the assistance of our contract group, Mayor and Mayor, to figure out what does that data mean? How does that translate into implementation in our individual regions? And then with that said, we do have a consulting group, Mayor and Mayor, on board to help us and to facilitate us through the regional planning process. We are currently working with them to assign technical assistance liaisons to each of the regions, and that process is starting now, and we're hoping by the end of January we'll have a good, sound plan, or at least all of the pieces that each of the regions need to develop those plans. So the formation of the regional teams, like I said, started last week. We're going to continue to build those teams. Then we're going to bring folks together in December, the 9th, 10th, and 11th, to actually start digging into the data. What does it mean? What do our population look like? What are our strategies that are currently in place? How can we leverage those strategies? And then what's our population look like, and how do we come together to serve that population? And then in January, somewhere about in January, we're going to have a statewide summit where we'll bring all 10 regions together, and you'll be doing still some regional teamwork, but we also want to continue to set and guide through a common state vision. And then around April, the Mayor and Mayor team will be providing us with a draft report of the summaries and findings. I think this is also important to emphasize that they're not writing anybody's plan. They're really just providing us with the framework and some tools to support the development and the writing of each individual region, of them writing their own plan. Next slide, please. So here's what our deliverables are going to look like, and I've kind of went through some of these, certainly the data reports for the 10 regions. The regional planning guides, I think, are going to be very helpful for you in your process. We are creating these outlines to guide you in how do you develop your plan, what are the sections that are going to be required, what are some helpful resources to get you through that process, and then also the local plans, because right now, for those of you that may not know, WIA and WIOA have always required a local plan. Well, WIA has always required a local plan. Under WIOA, the local plan will now be incorporated into the regional plan. Some of the activities that we're going to do, we're going to start out with a self-assessment of the team members to kind of gauge where folks are in the process. What kinds of activities do you have currently going on? Because there's certainly a lot of activities that we have done along the way. So what are those? What do those look like? And then the multi-regions, we talked about those, and then the recommendations we've also talked about. Next slide. And who's on our team? Next slide. So here's the configuration of the 10 economic development regions, and I'm sorry, on my screen it looks kind of small. But as I said, the IWIB and the interagency team came together and agreed to start with these 10 economic regions. And also I think it's important, and I missed the opportunity to say this earlier, these are the 10 economic regions that were also used in the community college planning process earlier in the spring that we were partnering with the Illinois Community College Board on and the President's Council. Next slide, please. So what are going to be the roles that we're going to have as team members? And it's going to be a lot of work. I think we would be remiss in not saying that this is going to take a lot of time to pull this together and really coalesce around a regional planning strategy. And although we've got specific meetings set, there is going to be work that's going to have to be done between each of those meetings. The self-assessment will be right around the corner. There will be other activities that will help in preparing you to hit the ground running in December on the around the data analysis and some of the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities. I think that's important that will happen within the region. Again, I think it's sort of a no-brainer that you should attend the regional meetings and the statewide summit. And then finally, I think it's very critical that as members we advocate and lead development of strategies, resource alignment among our partners, and then ensure that we have an integrated services in each region. Who are going to be the members of this team? This is not all-inclusive, but these are the broad categories of the partners. Workforce development, economic development entities. Who are the state partners in economic development? Who are the local partners in economic development? What kind of businesses are we currently involving? And then who might we be missing that we need to bring to the table? And that includes industry organizations, your community colleges and your four-year institutions. I mean, we've had some great success lately of working with the Illinois Board of Higher Education in how are we going to engage more strategically the four-year institutions in this process. So you'll be hearing more about that as we move along. Certainly adult ed is a critical partner. They are one of the 4 core partners that are specifically mentioned in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Again, as I mentioned earlier, K through 12 is foundational to make sure that we're making sure that the system is cohesive. So when you enter school and you go through your lifelong learning, that you're connected together, and that your training, either through life lessons or through educational types of lessons, that they're building on one another. Vocational rehabilitation, certainly a major partner. I think we've done a great job here in Illinois of pulling together activities around and programs around serving people with disabilities. We have a current initiative right now, the Disability Employment Initiative, that really speaks to that and has some great strategies that I think that we can take and then really scale those up so that they become strategies that are integrated in the service delivery model in general. Our community development partners, for example, the community action agencies, they have been very good about bringing and talking and discussing with us the resources that they bring to the table. I know Julio has mentioned them earlier. And then what are the other stakeholders that might not be in all of the 10 regions, but are in in your particular region that you need to partner with, like the National Farm Worker Jobs Program, which is for migrant and seasonal farm workers. And finally, here are the key dates that we'd love for everybody to get on their calendar just to kind of in the back of their minds, but we'll be on December 9th in Effingham, and we'll be at the Effingham Performance Center. And we will be releasing, when we release these dates, we are working on regional assignments. So because there are only the 3 locations, we're going to divvy up the economic development regions and group them around these these 3 central meeting points, but we're not ready to release those yet. So we'll be at the Effingham Performance Center on the 9th of December. We'll be in Bloomington at Illinois State University, and then we'll finish on the 11th at Moraine Valley College. And what's wonderful about this, and I think is a great opportunity for us to be modeling what we're trying to do regionally, is, of course, Effingham Performance Center is a business. We have a 4-year university, and we have a community college. And that was intentional on our part because we want it, wherever possible, we really want to model integration and partnerships and just how we can all come together. And then in January, we will have the statewide summit. So we kind of got through this a lot more quickly than we thought we were. So I guess that's a good thing for all of you that are super, super busy. But as I said earlier, we certainly are wanting to take your questions, and we are very happy to do so. If you would submit them in the chat pod, and we'll leave the chat pod open for a while so that you can put questions in there. Can you switch to the next slide? And then there's the link, which is kind of hard to see probably on your slide. It's hard to see here. The link that goes directly to the Q&A section on Illinois WorkNet. And it looks like Natasha's going to pull that up for us real quick. Is that what you were doing? Yeah. Okay, great. And so here is where it would be on Illinois WorkNet. And as I said earlier, too, we'll be posting the PowerPoint as well as the transcript of today, and it is being recorded, so if any of your other partners or staff within your organizations want an opportunity to listen to this presentation, they certainly will be able to do something. With that said, I think, Julio, I'm going to turn it back over to you for a final comment.
Okay. Again, I noticed there's lots of questions coming in. So we will take those questions. We're going to develop an FAQ so that as we compile the questions and the answers, those will be available to everyone. I want to, again, stress that with this process that we're undertaking is a planning process. It is, so the idea isn't that the plan becomes the final product, but that we've developed a process in each of the regions that really begin to look at high-level strategies in which folks can take the work that they're doing and really integrate it towards achieving those larger strategies. I want to thank you all for participating. We hope that many of you will get involved at the regional level. We have regional teams that will be reaching out. We know who attended this event. We will make sure that each of the regional teams knows who attended this event and that they will reach out to you. We are really wanting to engage businesses in this effort. So many of you that have business partners, we're asking you to reach out to them so that they can get involved in this effort. In particular, those of you who have programs where you have business involvement in the development of your programs or supporting your programs in some way, getting their ideas and their thoughts around this effort is very critical. Again, I want to thank you all. I want to thank Lisa and Natasha for their support in presenting today. And again, it's the beginning, and we hope that this will be something that we can continue to sort of build on as we go forward. So thank you, and have a great afternoon.